Göring once famously bragged that if a single enemy plane ever flew over Berlin, his name was Meyer. It was more than just a boast. It was a promise to the German people that the heart of the Third Reich was an impenetrable fortress. In the early years of the war, it looked like he was right. The Luftwaffe ruled the European skies with an iron fist, and for a long time the Allied bombing campaign was a slow-motion suicide mission. The Americans believed their B-17 flying fortresses could defend themselves with sheer firepower, but they were wrong. As soon as these bombers crossed into German airspace, they outran their own fighter escorts. The short-ranged Spitfires and P-47s had to turn back because they simply didn't have the fuel to go deep. That was the moment the German hunters would strike. They would sit just out of reach, waiting for the escorts to wave goodbye, and then they would dive into the bomber streams like wolves among sheep. Thousands of young airmen were being burned out of the sky. The losses were so high that the U.S. 8th Air Force was reaching a breaking point. They were losing planes and crews faster than they could replace them. To the German high command, the Americans were arrogant children playing a game they couldn't win. Göring was confident. His pilots were elite, his borders were sealed, and the air umbrella over Berlin was unbreakable. He believed the distance was his greatest weapon. As long as the Allies lacked a fighter that could go the distance, Berlin was safe. But while Göring was laughing, a new kind of engine was being tuned in a garage halfway across the world, and the arrogance of the Luftwaffe was about to hit a wall of cold, hard reality.
The nightmare for the Allies was a simple math problem: fuel. To reach Berlin and come back, a fighter needed to fly over 1,100 miles. No fighter in the world could do that and still have enough gas to actually fight. But the solution came from a desperate marriage of two different machines. The Americans had a sleek airframe called the P-51, but it was underpowered. The British had the Merlin engine, the heart of the Spitfire. When they bolted that Merlin engine into the Mustang, they created a monster. Then they added the final touch: disposable drop tanks. These were essentially external fuel jugs that the pilots would use to get to Germany and then drop them the moment they saw an enemy. Suddenly, the leash was gone. In March 1944, the German radar operators saw something that didn't make sense. A massive formation of bombers was approaching Berlin, but they weren't alone. Far beyond the point where the escorts usually turned back, a swarm of silver specks stayed right with the bombers. The German pilots scrambled, expecting to find the usual defenseless B-17s. Instead, they were bounced by Mustangs. For the first time, German pilots were being hunted in their own backyard. The sky over the capital wasn't a safe zone anymore. It was a killing field. The Luftwaffe found itself outclassed in speed, outclassed in altitude, and most importantly, outclassed in endurance. The little friends had finally arrived in Berlin, and they weren't leaving until the job was done. When the reports reached Göring's desk that American fighters were engaging his pilots directly over Berlin, the color drained from his face. He supposedly turned to his staff and admitted that the war was lost. It wasn't just about losing a few planes. It was the realization that German industry, German cities, and German oil were now completely exposed. There was no sanctuary left. The Mustang didn't just wait for the Germans to attack the bombers anymore. General Jimmy Doolittle gave his pilots a new order: hunt them down. The Mustangs began dropping to deck level, strafing German airfields and destroying the Luftwaffe before they could even take off. They targeted the seasoned German aces, the men who were supposed to train the next generation. As these veteran pilots died, they were replaced by terrified teenagers with only a few hours of flight time. The Luftwaffe was being bled white.
Within months, the Allied air forces had total air supremacy. This total control of the sky is what made D-Day possible. It's what allowed the Allies to choke the German supply lines until the Nazi war machine simply ran out of gas.